Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. One of the occupational hazards of doing the kind of work I do is to deal with introductions and then to have to live up to them. So I have discovered the best thing to do is to wash my hands completely of them and say that whatever he said he is responsible, I am not responsible. The topic that was given to me is Good to Great, which is, as you know, the title of Jim Collins' excellent book, which was written after another excellent book called Built to Last by Colin and Porras, and I recommend both of those books to you. Those who are taking photographs of the slides, you don't need to do that. I will give you this entire presentation after this program is over. So you don't have to do that. You can instead take notes. It is proven that what you write down with a pen and paper retains in the mind far better than what you take in any other way. And of course, obviously that refers also to photographs. So feel free to take your own notes. Whatever is on the screen, you will get it as part of this program. At the end of the program, the link has already been emailed to the operations manager, and he will email it to all of you, inshallah. I took this title of Good to Great, as I said, is the title of Jim Collins' book, and it's a tribute to him and his excellent research in this context. We are not talking about how do you take an unsuccessful, failed organization and make it work. We are not talking about that. We are talking about looking at organizations which are doing well, which are good organizations, which are achieving their goals, and so on, and then saying, how can we take those organizations and make them great? And obviously, the first question to ask yourself is, what do you mean by great? So what is great according to you? So if you are running an organization, whether it's AMP or any other your personal organization and so on, and you say, I want to make this organization great, obvious question is, what do you mean by great? In my view, great is not a function of turnover, because that's usually how organizations are described. I think that's a very short-sighted and a very limited description of an organization. To say that this organization is so many 100 crores, so many billions, and so on and so on, I think that's a very bad way of describing an organization. So it's not a function of turnover. It's also not a function of the number of employees. It's not a function of the number of locations in the world that the organization is located in, and so on and so forth. So I am, as you see, I am negating almost all the usual ways of defining organizations. In my view, greatness is is a product of the effect. It's a factor of the effect of that organization. So you need not be a very large organization, but you can be an extremely influential organization, an extremely powerful organization. So the effect of the organization, how would you define your organization in terms of greatness, in terms of the effect that you want this organization to produce in the environment in which the organization exists, number one. Number two, in order to achieve that effect, what are the products and services that you need to create and give to the market? And in a line, what is the legacy that you are talking about that you want to leave behind? So what do you want to be remembered for? I submit to you that design defines product performance. It's not anything else. Design defines product performance. To give you an example, if you look at that picture there, there's a cruise liner and there's a locomotive. You're talking about locomotive, you're talking about thousands of horsepower. The cruise liner, you're looking at multiples of that. But which will fly? Right? Here's a plane which is, I mean, that one's got a horsepower which is less than a motorcycle. Performance is a function of design. It's not a function of anything else. Many times, when you're not getting performance, people say, the first thing you ask them is, why are you not getting performance? They will say, we don't have enough money, we don't have enough resources, we don't have enough people, all of which is wrong. You can take a Ferrari which goes at, say, 200 miles an hour, a Ferrari at 200 miles an hour still stays on the ground. A microlight at a fraction of that speed takes to the air. Issue of design. So when people say, I want to make my organization great, and you say, what do you want? I want $100 million. No, you don't want $100 million. You want to look at the design of the organization. Is your organization designed to be great or not in the first place? Because if your organization is a train, it is never going to fly, no matter what you do with it. Now, there's nothing wrong in being a train, so you don't have to feel bad about that. But my point is that if you have defined yourself to say that I want an organization which takes to the air, then you better redesign your organization and create an organization that is actually capable of flying. So it's not an issue of size or an issue of power or issue of resources or money or number of people or locations. It's an issue of design. So what makes great? I believe, as I mentioned before, we're talking about the effect of something, and the effect is to make a positive impact on the environment. So therefore, to ask yourself and say, in what ways does my organization benefit society? Now, one of the initiatives that I have been involved in with GE from 1994-95 onwards is the Six Sigma Quality Initiative. And therefore, I'm a very hardcore believer in the importance of measurement if you want to see the effect of anything. It's not hype, it's not your so-called feeling, it's the question of numbers. Can you put a number on that? Can you measure the effect of your organization? If the measurement is not there, then I don't believe that that is happening, no matter how much you feel. Right? So for example, while we were coming from the airport, Farooq Bhai was telling me about your SDL, Skill Development Lecture program. And he was telling me how it's a very well received program and so on. And he said how you believe that it's very effective. Now, I'm not criticizing you. I'm only applying my Six Sigma logic to that. And I'm saying that how do you measure the effectiveness of the SDL initiative? How do you measure the effectiveness of the Skill Development Lecture initiative? I have been doing leadership training for and consulting now from 1985 onwards, so that's a lot of years. To me, the term skill development lecture itself is suspect, because you don't develop skills by lectures. I'm not criticizing you, you put me here, so I have to say something, right? Please understand that very clearly. Skills are not developed by lectures. So first of all, you need to ask yourself, do you want that particular title? Number one. Number two is, say for example, you delivered a lecture on preparing young people to attend interviews. So first question is, can you do that in a lecture? Answer is no. How do I know that? Because I have written a book on it. I am supposed to know. Number two is, let's assume that you have given this lecture. Was it effective or not? How do you know? Not by asking for feedback. Not by telling people, did you like the lecture? It doesn't matter if you like the lecture or not. We're not talking about that. We're talking about, can you now go and attend an interview and succeed? So what's the measurement of a career development within quotes lecture? Again, as I said, that lecture needs to be removed. What is the measurement of that? How many of those students successfully attended interviews, meaning got jobs? That is the measurement. If that measurement is not happening, then my submission to you respectfully is that you do not know whether that initiative is successful or not. I'm not saying it's not successful, I'm saying you don't know. The reality is you do not know. And that is why very important to measure the effect of what you are doing. So therefore, how does the organization benefit society? What are the measurable ways? And what's the criterion of decision making? Shareholder value or societal benefit? Again, example. I've been a consultant with GE from 1994 onwards. I'm on GE's corporate leadership development faculty in Crotonville, GE Corporate University in New York. I was teaching a course. GE for the first time brought out the research facility into Bangalore. It's called the Jack Welch Research Center. It came out of Schenectady into Bangalore, which is the first time it came out of the United States into any other country. It's the first time it came to Bangalore. It so happened that I was teaching a course there, a leadership development program in G, one of the Croton Mill courses in GE. When I went there, the thing that I noticed was that every single thing in that building was imported. The chairs were they were regular chairs, like office chairs, you know, the so-called executive chair, which is adjustable. The chairs were from Malaysia. Tables were from somewhere else. The stationery was imported. The pens and the pads and stuff was imported. Post-it notes imported. The packages actually came when I was there by DHL. To the extent that in the everything, the TV screens, whatnot. To the extent that in the interval I went to do what cannot be delegated, and when I went there I found that everything in that place was also imported. That which receives your output was also imported. Now that was the last straw, so I asked the vice president there, who was another old student of mine from GHRLP training. I told him, why have you imported everything? Because every single one of those imported things is made in India to global standards. We get perfectly good chairs, office chairs in this country, which are to global standards. You get perfectly good stationery. Post-it notes are made in this country. Where I went to do what only I can do, all that stuff is sanitary ware is made in India, global standards. Why is everything imported? He said, you know, we have a central resourcing facility and so forth and so on, all of which arguments I know very well. The point I made for him, I said, well, as an Indian manager, did you not suggest that this should be done? He said, no, nobody asked me because I only came after the place was constructed. So I said, how many? Then he laughed and he said, you know what? He said, probably almost the only Indians who are here are the staff. Because all the others, even those who are Indians, are actually NRIs or they are US citizens and they are working here on US salaries. Now that part of it I am not particularly bothered about, because you need certain qualifications to be working in a place like that, and if you don't have that, you don't have that. So that's okay. Point I am making here is that as an organization, do you think of societal benefit as a criterion of decision making, or do you think purely shareholder value? I know that if you centrally source purchases, then you can get major discounts on purchases, so therefore you make some money. But making money on purchases is not your core business. You are not a purchasing facility, you are a manufacturing company. On the other hand, if you buy stuff locally, you are supporting local communities, you are supporting local businesses, you are helping people to get jobs, you are creating new jobs in the environment in which you function, all of which will still give you what you want at your cost and at your quality level, but you are supporting local communities. Now, does that factor into your decision-making process or not? That's what I mean by societal impact. And that's why I'm a very hardcore believer in the importance of entrepreneurship and in the importance of SMMEs in society to build a strong base of a very strong middle class which can support the environment and the economies of the countries. GDP, for example, on a side note, GDP, for example, is a very bad indicator of the economic growth and the financial viability and the financial health of a country. It's a very bad indicator, because you can have a country with a few very high value producing organizations, manufacturing facilities and so forth, research facilities, and the country can be in, the rest of the country can be in grinding poverty. You will still have a very healthy looking GDP. GDP does not give you an indicator of the distribution of financial wealth across the country, which is really what indicates the financial health of an economy or the financial health of society. I mean, many times people like to quote GDP figures. GDP of India is this much, that much. Makes no sense whatsoever. To go forward, great is what great does. So greatness is a state of doing, it's not a state of being. So again, definition of what do you mean by great. The model I want to share with you, this is a model that again, I have a book on this, as a matter of fact 2 books on this, Entrepreneur's Diary and The Business of Family Business. The model is to move from being person-led to being process-driven. That is the secret of longevity as far as organizations are concerned. That is the secret of moving from generation to generation and so on and so forth. Now this is the model that I propose, and I am very quickly going to go over this model for you. Based on a foundation of confidence in identity. It is very important for you as the owners, as the top management and as the members of the organization, down to the last person, to feel a very strong sense of identity, a very strong sense of subscription, a very strong sense of loyalty, a very strong sense of belonging to the organization. Walmart, for example, is an organization that is very well known in this context of people having a very strong sense of belonging. For example, one of the sentient systems in Walmart is that every so many times a day, all the entire staff of the store, they jump up onto the counter and they jump up and down and they sing what is called the Walmart chant. Now, if you are in the store at that time, believe me, it's ridiculous. It's not even funny. I mean, it's the only thing I can say is ridiculous. I mean, if there's one reason I will not join Walmart is because then I would be expected to do that. But that is the secret of belonging. The point is that if you are invested enough in the organization to find nothing ridiculous about standing on top of a counter and jumping up and down and singing the Walmart chant, then it means that that organization and you are one. That your identity is the identity of the organization. So it's not a matter of doing a particular thing, it's a matter of saying how invested are you in that to be able to support that. And that is an example of being invested, of having a high degree of confidence in identity. Based on this foundation of confidence in identity, a inverted triangle, like an expanding band of rays of what I call the covenant. And we'll look at each of these very quickly. On top of the covenant, what the covenant supports is a strategic focus. What is a strategic focus? Once again, not any particular focus, but the way of focusing in a strategic manner, not in a tactical manner. This band of rays on one side is supported by a strong focus on people, and on the other side by a strong focus on quality. I have shown you how to draw triangles, which proves that I went to business school. That's what I learned in IIM Ahmedabad. They teach you 2 things, drawing triangles and drawing intersecting circles. I think that's probably also somewhere there. Confidence in identity, I mentioned that before, a very strong sense of who you are, a very strong pride in that, a great confidence in that, to say, who am I? I am such and such. As a person, investment in the organization. For this, what is critical is this one word, which is to differentiate. If I ask you, one of the things we teach in communication is what we call the elevator speech, which is in 15 seconds, introduce yourself. And I can probably bet you that unless you went to one of my classes, if I ask you to introduce yourself, you will start with your name. Bad idea. Nobody remembers names. Especially if you have a complicated name like most of us have, then it's even worse. Number 2, you will start off by a generic definition of who you are. I am an engineer. Great news. India produces 300,000 of those every year and 85% of them are unemployable. You get the point I'm saying? 15 seconds over. What do I remember about you? Nothing. Differentiate. Why? Because differentiation creates brand, brand inspires loyalty, and loyalty enables influence. When you go to the store to buy toothpaste, what do you ask? Mr. Ansari, what do you ask? Do you say, do you say, I want toothpaste? Does anyone say, I want toothpaste? Is there such a thing called toothpaste? I submit to you that there is no such thing called toothpaste. There are brands. Is there something called a car? Anybody? Is there a car? There's no car. There are brands. Then how come you are an engineer? You get the point I'm saying? Differentiate. So what is your brand? Personally and as an organization, what is your brand? And I don't want, and you cannot give a lecture on that. Your brand has to be in one word. One single word. Without brand, you are a grain of rice in a sack. You are still rice, but you are one grain in a sack. You lived and you died, and the only one who knows that is the one who created you, nobody else. From this base, this foundation, we get the covenant, which was that inverted triangle, the expanding band of rays. What is the covenant? The covenant, I love this word covenant, because covenant is a promise. Covenant is not something which somebody makes you do. Covenant is what you do because you are inspired to do that. A covenant is a promise to yourself to do the best that you can do. And therefore the question to ask is, what are you here to do? Why do you exist? When I do visioning workshops for organizations, that's the question I ask them. The question I ask them is, if you cease to exist, if you were wiped off the face of the planet, who would feel a loss? Many times when I'm speaking to Muslim groups, I ask them this question, that if tomorrow morning the non-Muslims in this country woke up and they discovered that all the Muslims and all the signs of Islam and all the symbols of Islam and all the masajid and all the madaris and all the adhan and every single symbol of Islam has disappeared. If they wake up in the morning tomorrow and they discover that every single symbol of Islam has disappeared, would they feel a loss? I'm asking a question. I'm not saying they will feel, I'm not saying they will not feel. I'm asking you a question. Will they feel a loss? To give you an understanding of that, if you woke up tomorrow morning and you found no more cell phones, no phones, no towers, no network, no nothing. You still have landlines, but no more cell phone, no more WhatsApp, no more what's not app, what not. Would you feel a loss? Yes or no? If they wake up, if the non-Muslims of this country, of this world wake up tomorrow morning and there are no Muslims, will they feel a loss? Yes or no? How do you know? What is the data? What is the data? That is my point. I would ask you the same question both ways. Huh? If you said no, I would still say that. What is the data? How do you know? And some of you said yes. My question to you again is, what is the data? How do you know? That's the issue of being a great organization. What are you here to do? Tomorrow, if you disappeared, if you were not here, would somebody feel the loss? How do you know? The band of rays supports a strategic focus. As I said, a strategic focus is that which gives context. It puts you in context of the rest of the world. A strategy is not tactics. A strategy is not effort. A strategy is not the amount of money or people you put into something. A strategy is what you are focused in the long term to achieve. Right? So think about that. I'm deliberately not mentioning to you the taglines of various organizations which are dreamt up by ad agencies. For example, Tata Steel, we also make steel. Yeah, if you know. Now, I'm not saying whether that is right or not. I'm just saying that I'm not talking about it. I'm saying ask yourself in your heart, what is your strategy? Why is the strategy important? Because strategic focus then does two things. One is it enables you to draw an overall action plan which you can then implement, and it also enables you to foresee. I'm not talking about being prophetic, I'm talking about scenario planning, of being able to plan scenarios of different kinds to deal with different kinds of challenges that you may face going forward. So it's not about any particular strategy, but it's about a focus about how any strategy should work. So we've dealt with the central part. Now we look at focus on quality. Quality is, yes, it's a competitive advantage, but today quality has also become a boundary condition, except in two areas. I'm talking about India, except in two areas. One is schooling, because this is the only country in the world probably where bad schools sell. Very sad, but that's the reality. And the other one is Muslim organizations. We need to change this. It's very, very embarrassing. So quality is a boundary condition. Anywhere in the world, if you don't have quality, you are not even in the running. You are not even in the running. Very important to understand about quality is that quality increases value, not cost. A BMW and an ambassador, which is more costly? If that was a straight answer, I wouldn't ask you the question. You should understand that about me. Which is the more costly car? An ambassador is more costly. What is a BMW? More valuable. Differentiate between value and cost. A cost does not add value. Possessions add cost. Knowledge adds value. Quality adds value, not cost. And again, as I said before, clear measurements. You don't know if you have quality until and unless you measure. And that's why Michael Harry, the guy who invented Six Sigma in Motorola, he says if you want to see what someone values, see what they measure. How many of you have heard this term, time is money? Is it? Money is a renewable resource. If I lose 100 rupees, it won't even bother me. I'm saying even if it bothered me, I can still get it back. I can earn that again. I go beg somebody for it. But if I lose 10 minutes, and you might say, well, what's so important about 10 minutes? Imagine your dying moment. Malakul Maut standing in front of you says, Salaam alaikum. You say, Wa alaikum as-salam. He says, I'll give you 10 minutes. Do you want 10 minutes now? What's the value of 10 minutes at that time? Does it have value? What's the value? The value between Jannah and Jahannam. Seriously. Zawar said he called me Sheikh because I am his teacher. He called me Sheikh also because I am a legitimate Maulana, so I can say all of this stuff. I actually went to a madrasa and I qualified. 10 minutes at the time of death, you are not going to get it, believe me, I am not going to get it either. I am just saying, if you had it, is the difference between Jannah and Jahannam. Why? Because you can make tawbah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised to forgive sins, right? So I got 10 minutes, I make sincere and serious sincere tawbah, I cry and weep, I say, Ya Allah, please. Boom, gone, alhamdulillah, Jannah, khalas. That is the value of 10. So Malakul Maut is standing before you, Salaam alaikum, 10 minutes. Please, alhamdulillah, please. No, hold on. What will you pay for that 10 minutes? You don't get it for free. You said time is money, right? What will you pay? What do we do today in our lives? Measurement. Very, very critical as far as quality is concerned. Last one of that is focus on people. Please understand, developing people is not an option. It's not an option. People say, well, developing people costs money. No problem, don't spend the money. Have people who are unskilled. People say, if I train people, they will leave. I say, no problem, don't train them, they will stay. Huh? Is that what you want in your organization? Treat development as an investment, not as a cost, because that's what it is. It's not a cost, it's an investment. Two things you must do. Number one, treat it as an investment, which means that do that systematically according to your strategy. Unless you have a strategy, you can't do that, so you need a strategy. Number two, the issue of alignment. Aligning all other processes to your developmental and training processes. Training is not a solution for everything. One of the big problems today, for example, is what is called motivational training. Somebody comes and gives you a great motivational lecture. Everyone is very charged up. Then you go back in the organization, and no organization process supports what the motivational lecturer told you. So what happens now? You were demotivated to begin with, now you are at the bottom of the pit and you are digging. Your training must be supported by your recruitment, must be supported by your compensation and reward system, and must be supported by your promotion system. These three systems must support your training, otherwise training is worthless. That's what I mean by focusing on people. So what are the dangers of not changing? One of the big problems of changing is we don't like to hear bad news, we don't like to hear something which is critical, because all change produces anxiety. Every single kind of change produces anxiety, and therefore the simplest thing is we believe we don't need training. Many times people come and say, well, I want my juniors to be trained. It's very nice. Is this part of a process or is it only the juniors? Because the seniors all feel that they are beyond training. That's actually a fact, but they don't mean it in the way that I am saying it. The problem is, change is necessarily painful, but not changing is fatal. Corporate history is full of stories of good organizations, great organizations, which broke apart because they refused to change. AT&T is a classic example. Broke up into three pieces because of lack of the willingness to change. Right? GE just now is going through some very difficult times. Last few years. Again, issue of change. So question to ask yourself is, where do you stand as far as change is concerned? What are the benefits of changing? To survive, if you adapt, you will survive. But adapting means the change is already happening or happened and you are adapting to that change. If you don't adapt, you will perish. So adapting ensures survival. But if you want to grow, you need to anticipate change. You need to change before the need for change becomes apparent. But the greatest one is, if you want to run the show, if you want to run the game, who makes more money? The people who play 2020 or the people who run 2020? So do you want to be a player? Being a player and winning is a good thing, nothing wrong. Or do you want to be the owner of the game? That's the issue. So where do you stand? Now very important to watch out for a trap. The moment you talk about changing, then there is a trap. And that trap is what Peter Senge calls systems thinking, the theory of loops. Peter Senge is one of my favorite writers. His book, The Fifth Discipline, and the companion book with that, the Fifth Discipline Field Book. I suggest that you read both of those books. Very, very important. Each one is that big and dry, boring reading. So good luck to you. But it's very, for me, it's very interesting. So I've read both of them. Now, any change, there's a good intention behind it. For example, you might say, well, there is an issue of gender balance or gender imbalance in the organization. We don't have enough women. We must recruit women because you can't have an organization which is only men and so on. So all good intentions, let us promote gender equality and so forth. So you start recruiting. So there's a good intention and there's a growing action. But what happens automatically is that anytime there's a growing action, automatically there is an opposite reaction which starts in the organization. That's called the compensating loop. So there is a causal loop and there is a compensating loop. Now in the case of the example that I gave you, for example, is we call these mental models. And the example I gave you of women, for example, is your intention to hire people, but at the same time now you will see people who are saying, oh my God, this becomes like a kitchen cabinet, and you have to listen to all these women yakketing all the time, and so on and so on. So you get a lot of anti-woman talk and anti-woman feeling that starts simultaneously. The issue is that when you start a causal loop, if you don't detect and take care of the compensating loop in time, then over time the compensating loop will neutralize and reverse the initiative that you actually took. Now important to understand in this is that mental models, Chris Argyris of Harvard, he says that although people do not always behave congruently with their espoused theories, they do behave congruently with the theories in use, which are called mental models. The difference between your stated values and your practiced values. That gap is the one through which credibility falls. If your demonstrated or your practiced values are different from your stated values. For example, you might say, well, stated value is customer service, high-end customer service, superior customer service, blah blah whatever. But you go to the organization and you find people don't answer telephone calls. You go to meet somebody, people are not there, the way you are treated is not the way it should be. So that means that actual value is different from the practice value is different from the stated value. So mental models. Now, we all have mental models. It's a very important thing to remember this and to accept and acknowledge this. There is no one who is free from that. This is part of our conditioning as we grow up. We have mental models concerning many different things. For example, we might have mental models concerning gender. We have mental models concerning authority. We have mental models concerning obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for example. We have mental models concerning conforming with with whatever society wants you to do. So different kinds of mental models. We all have them. Important thing to understand is that they must be questioned. Not necessarily everything needs to be changed, but what you do keep must be kept after questioning and after accepting that this is there. Many people feel very threatened if you talk about mental models. We don't like to be questioned. We see that in a net negative manner, but that is useless, because mental models that we question and are aware of, we can control and they are beneficial to us. Mental models that we are not aware of, which are in the unconscious, they control us and they enslave us. And that's why it's very important to do this exercise as far as mental models is concerned. So to change them, first of all, you need to articulate and see what they are, map them with the desired mental model, right? And see what is the delta, what is the gap, and then define behaviors which will reflect the new mental models. Many years ago, I was doing a customer service workshop for DHL, dealing with their people who answer the phones. The first time you call them, what was taught to them, this was a company from Singapore which did that, what was taught to them was, number one, you answer the phone on the second ring, not on the first ring. Because we're talking about the old landline system. So the first ring might be a false ring. So you answer on the second ring, not on the third ring, because 3 rings is too long. So you answer the phone on the second ring, and then you say, good morning, this is DHL, how can I help you? And you say that with a smile. Now you are answering a phone, it's not a video conference. Why must you smile? Because people can hear your smile. People can hear your smile. So we say in customer service now, imagine you're putting metrics on this. You are bringing it down to actual measurable processes. Did you answer the phone on the second ring or not? Measurable process. Did you actually make this statement, good morning, this is DHL, how can I help you? measurable process. Did you smile in that process? Yes, we can measure that, we can record that, we know that. You say that 150 times a day, you become helpful. Automatically. How can I help you? How can I help you? Then you can go to hell. No, you can't go to hell. I will become helpful. Right? So this makes you to, it brings about a sense of helpfulness when you do that. Put metrics on that. That is the way to change behavior if you are seriously interested in. I already mentioned this. Therefore, critical mindset change is to move from consumption to contribution. To move from what can I get out of it to what can I give to it, what can I do for it. That is the mental model shift that needs to change. My specialization is in consulting with business families, with family business consulting. I have a book on that. This is one of the major things that I teach promoters and promoter family children, to say that think of your organization as something that you need to contribute to. For example, sometimes we have this, we have instances where young people in family businesses, they have some altercation with the first generation, with the father or uncles or whoever, and he wants out. So I want to get out of the business. So I remember one conversation. This guy came to me, he said, please speak to my father and ask him to give me my share of the business. So I said, no problem, I'll do that. He was very happy. You will speak to my father. I said, of course, no problem, I'll speak to him. So I said, how much is your share of the business? I was telling him something. I mean, I must tell him something. So what's your share? He said 50%. So I said, excellent, fantastic. How did you come to that number? Why 50%? I said, why not 75%? Why not 60%? He said, no, we just divide it. I said, this is not a cake. It's a business. Right? It's not a question of divide it. You said 50% is your share of the business. How did you come to that? So he said, then how do I define that? I said, your share of the business is your share of contributing to that business. How much do you think you contributed? He said, well, I've just been here 5 years. I said, exactly. He said, your father built the business for the last 50 years. You come in 5 years, in 5 years, and you want 50% of the business contribution. What is my share? Your share is what you contributed. Total it up. No problem. Numbers. Some thoughts to leave with you. Number one. All businesses are dictatorships. Very interesting. How many of you, what phones are you carrying? How many of you are carrying phones? How many of you are carrying fruits? Apples, Blackberries? Anyone with decent phones? Androids? How many of you have a phone which is 2 years old? Show of hands. 2 years old. Got it. How many of you have a phone which is 5 years old? How many of you have a phone which is 10 years old? They want any phones, right? No, I mean, what if I tell you that there are two things in this world? Technology has moved, right? Technology has moved. Technology has moved and continues to move. You and I are so focused on technology that you consider it, many of you consider it an insult to your personality if you have a phone which is not up to date. It's not just a matter, it's your image, your whole ego is invested in this phone. Yet, the system which create the technology, the entire business system, is 300 years old. There are two major crimes committed on society. Or three actually, but I'm saying two because that two fits with this. First one is the commercialization of healthcare. Second one is the commercialization of education. And the third one is the entire industrial business model. If we leave the healthcare out of it, education as you and I know it, illa mashallah, except for very specific schools, by and large globally, education came out of the Industrial Revolution, 1740s. We are in that's the 18th century, we are in the 21st century. and has remained static, has remained exactly the same. The systems of education in the 1700s are exactly the same as today. So also the systems of businesses, hierarchies, business structures, the same as in the Industrial Revolution. In businesses, adding insult to injury was that most of the jargon and most of the systems came out of the military. Because that's the first place where they even talked about leadership, because in the First World War, a lot of the officers got killed. So now you had people in the field, and the officers were dead, so you have to promote people. How do you do that? So they say, find a quick way of identifying some leadership potential, some leadership skills, and I find it in this guy, make him lieutenant, make him a captain. That has remained throughout industry. And therefore we have the situation where, how many organizations do you know where employees elect their leaders? Zero. Exactly. Why not? One of the major problems is communication between employee and employer. I will tell you about an organization which in the 12th century had an organizational structure which was completely and totally democratic. And that was the army of Genghis Khan. He was not a Muslim, believe me, the Khan is a title. The army of Genghis Khan was an army which was organized totally and completely democratically. Every 10 people, every 10 soldiers elected a leader who was their commander. 10 people electing a leader, what does it mean? It means that leader knows those 10 people like that. They elect him because they look up to him, because they admire him, because they know him so well. He is one of them. Every 10 elect one, every group of 10 elect one, every group of 100 elects one, every group of 1,000 elects one, every 10,000 elects one, and that was the two-man commander who was the equivalent to the corps commander in our current infantry setup. 12th century. Result? An army that never lost a battle ever. The most successful army ever in the world, the army of Genghis Khan. Completely democratic. But it's not a single corporate organization today which is democratic. Number two, do subordinates write appraisals for superiors? Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. In GE we do something called the NMA, which is the new manager assimilation process, where a new manager comes into an organization. We give him about 3 weeks or so, or a month, and then we go and take feedback from his direct reports. We meaning either somebody like me does it as an external person, or one of the HR people does it. They take feedback from their direct reports, and that feedback is collated and presented to the manager to say, this is what your people are saying about your managerial style. And then there is a face-to-face meeting with him or her and the direct reports with this feedback. There are no names given there, but the feedback is there. And the manager is supposed to say, thank you for the feedback. This part of it I know and I am willing to change, so please help me with that. This other part of it I know or I did not know, but this one I can't change. So that's something you might have to live with, or we have to see what to do. This is what's called an NMA, new manager assimilation. But other than that, subordinates do not write report for superiors. The only exception is the 360-degree appraisal, which we do in GE, which I do for myself initially, incidentally, where this happens, and that's not it's a development process. It's not part of the performance development or the performance compensation thing. When you are hiring people, who does the final hiring interview in your organization? Usually the CEO. Or senior enough position, usually the board of directors. Why not the direct reports? Why not the people who are going to be working with that person going forward? Last question. Who loses their jobs first when the organization heads south? Who? The people who had nothing to do with that loss. They didn't make the decisions. Nobody asked them anything. What would happen if you turn this upside down? People talk about motivation speeches, utterly useless thing. Do this, and you will have the most motivated organization that you can ever imagine. And I gave you an example from the 12th century. Questions? You really want an invested organization? You really want an organization which is, people are invested in it, who has access to your P&L data, profit and loss data? And if you think I'm talking through my hat or my turban, in Walmart, every counter assistant has access, is given the P&L statement for the year. They get a balance sheet for the year, everyone. And very interestingly, every person is supposed to know, and the only allowance given is that they are allowed to have that on a piece of paper if they want to read it out. The sale for yesterday and your target for today. Sam Walton actually used to go around stores and he would grab the store assistant and say, what was your sale yesterday? And you had to have a number, which he checked. Complete transparency. Who has access to corporate strategy? Who knows and decides on your salary? As a manager, do your subordinates know what you earn? Why shouldn't they know that? What's so secret? How many times do you meet your customers? Every single one of these is measurable. You can write down. Whatever you are doing, how many times did you meet your customers in the last 1 year? If you cannot give me an exact number, sorry, I'm not interested. And that's why I say, how well do you know your employees and your customers? How well do you know them? Randomly, if I grabbed an employee and say, I'm not talking about, you are a vice president and I'm grabbing a store assistant. No. We'll go to a reasonable level. People you see on a reasonably, regular basis. And if I tell you, please tell me names of their children. Succession planning, absolutely critical for organizations to become great. Successors drive failure if they are made successors because of genes and not genes. You understand what I'm saying, right? Do you have a formal successor identification and development mentoring plan? And is competence the only criteria of choice? I don't know how many of you have you heard of the GE Aeroplane interview? Anybody? No? They actually do this in GE. For the CEO position, to select people, it takes multiple years. It takes maybe 5 years, maybe 7, 8 years, 10 years. They go across the company and finally they come up with 3 people who are potential to be CEO of the organization. Each of them goes up in a plane with the current CEO. They actually do this, right? You sit in a corporate plane, you go on a flight. And the CEO, the current CEO, asks only one question. So if I am the incumbent, if I have been selected one of 3, and Zafar Ansari is my boss, he is the current CEO of General Electric. When we are at cruising altitude, Zafar will ask me, if this plane crashes and both of us die, who is ready to take the CEO position? And I am expected to give a name. Plane lands. GE Corporate Audit does a complete due diligence on the name that I gave. So if I gave the name Amir Idrisi, they do a complete due diligence on Amir Idrisi to see what? Is he ready to be CEO of General Electric? Now, you find that, okay, this guy Amir Idrisi, fantastic guy, great, wonderful, so on, so on. He will be ready potentially in the next 2 years, 3 years, 1 year. Right now he is not ready. This is the corporate audit statement on Amir Idrisi. Who is Amir Idrisi? The man who I said is ready to take over GE from me today. Guess what happens? Guess quickly. What happens? Huh? Who loses his job? Me. The incumbent. Who are you firing? Who is the incumbent? He or she is one of 3 people out of 300,000 people worldwide. You're not firing a dog. You're firing one of your best people. Why? Because they failed to develop a successor. So when I do my workshops for corporate organizations, especially family business and so on, I ask this question. I say, who is ready to take your place? And then I say, if that person is not ready, are you ready to walk out of that door? Because you should. You should. That is the meaning of being serious about succession planning. So 4 key processes: number 1, recruitment; number 2, promotion; number 3, training; number 4, compensation. All of these must be aligned if you want to have a great organization, and there are no shortcuts. Fatal traps, and we are coming to the conclusion of my presentation. Number 1, as I mentioned before, lack of transparency and the inability to take critical feedback. Number 2, different strokes for different folks. Doesn't work. Number 3, confusing enthusiasm for competence. The two are completely different. Number 4, confusing psychophancy, yes-manship, agreement for loyalty. The most loyal person to you is the one who will disagree with you when you need to be disagreed with. The best friend of yours is the one who tells you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. And the last one, fatal trap, is excluding women from business. Very foolish. Many South Asian organizations, it's an unwritten policy that women are not included in the business. Daughters-in-law not included in the business. Major problem. According to me, that's a very, very major problem with how we do business. I mean, all of these I can explain at great length. I don't have the time now. I'm not going to do it. And of course, read my book. I mean, that's the best way of understanding all of this. So, and finally, and this is a very Muslim thing, compromising quality in the name of kindness. We accept all kind of bad quality. We say, "Arey jaan to apna bhai hai na? Bhai hai to do joote maro." Accept, not only don't accept, also beat him. Serious, I'm telling you. We had a prime minister in our country. Hyderabad was a country, right? And the prime minister of the Nizam was Maharaja Sir Kishan Prasad Bahadur. It's a famous story about Kishan Prasad. I don't know if it's true or not, but it's a very well mentioned story. The story is that if a poor Muslim came to him and asked him for something, Maharaja Bahadur was very kind to him and very nice to him, and he would say, why did you come? आप क्यों तकलीफ करें? आप मुझे बता देते, मैं देता. ये आपका वजीफा है, ये आप महाना 5 रुपए आपका वजीफा. 5 rupees a month, 10 rupees a month. In those days, they were talking about 1900s. 10 rupees a month was very comfortable living. Right? Today it won't buy you a cup of tea, but that's a different thing. If a Hindu came to him, Maharaja Kishan Prasad, he was a poet, and he also had a very wonderful vocabulary in our Dakkani Urdu of counting the lineage of somebody. He would start from your great-grandmother and come downwards. So, if a Hindu came to him, he would start from there. He would curse him, he would tell you, you are lazy, this, and then he would say, here is this land which is there in the boondocks somewhere, near some river or something. Here is this piece of land, 10 acres, 15 acres, whatever it is, jungle, bush, nothing there. This is your land, go. Run that land, grow something there, make a farm. No pension, no 10 rupees a month, nothing. Who was he being kind to? The Muslims still have 10 rupees a month. The others have huge farms. Because they went and they worked very hard. Kindness means to hold people to standards. It does not mean to accept poor quality. Please understand this. Some home truths. How many people say that your organization, we are one family? How many people? Everyone has become very educated now. Huh? You don't raise your hand for anything. A family is a very bad simile. It's a very bad example for a business because families are rigid hierarchies. Your father will never become your son. The son can never become the father. Organizations need fluid hierarchies. Number two, honesty makes great business sense. Our country is plagued by dishonest business people at all levels. 2 books of accounts, fudging taxes, giving bribes, all kinds of stuff which we do is bad business. It is possible to run clean businesses and become humongously wealthy and successful. Number 3 is customer service is not what you think. Customer service is what the customer feels. And number 4 is only happy employees can make customers happy. And that's why the bottom line there, the business does not need you, you need the business. The business can be sold tomorrow, it will run perfectly well. You will starve. Alright. So therefore, in conclusion, creating a great business is not a mystery. Like planes, you have to learn to fly. And also like plane, it's not only the pilot who is important. The guy greasing the caps is equally important. There's a wonderful TV thing that comes on which talks about the crashes of the world, different plane crashes. And they have done a complete investigation into why that crash happened. And one of the most amazing one was where they found that there was one rivet, one single rivet which was loose on one aileron of the plane, which resulted many years on, not even immediately, many hundreds of hours of flight on, that loose rivet which was never riveted back again, resulted in the plane crashing and people dying. So everyone in the organization is important. It's not only the CEO or the pilot. And that's why I'm saying key question is how much do you really want to do it? That's a bibliography, that's a set of books that you might want to read. Those of you who are interested. And that's my email and website. As I said, you will get all of these slides and you get everything there. So take a look at that. A great pleasure and honor to be here. I must run off. I've got a plane to catch because I had my morning flight got delayed and so on and so forth. So I'm going to run away. I will be here for another maybe 10 minutes for any quick questions and then I am out of here. Jazakallahu khairan. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you so much, Mirza Yawar Baig sir. I'm sure your session will have ignited a lot of hearts. Today, a lot of people are confused now to ask or not to ask because they have given a lot of thoughts and words in their mind as well. I'm sure that what all has been covered today. It's been, I would say, becoming a life-changing movement for AMP as well as other organizations who are working towards the community or other businesses, alhamdulillah, who are running. You have given us some quick thoughts, like some of the key takeaways, which I personally liked was, change is difficult, but if you don't change, you will not survive. Then our mental models, is it inclined us towards the people or away from the people? Then to measure, that is one of the, I would say, key takeaway for all of us today. Whatever you do, you measure it. It may be a community service, it may be anything in each and every way. Now, any questions are there? As sir mentioned, yeah, please, I could not see, yeah, I could see one hand. If any mics are there, we'll have only 10 minutes till maybe some 3-4 questions, inshallah, we'll entertain. This side.
My question is, process of electing Khalifa is relevant in this era?
Process of electing Khalifa.
I will not answer that question because I don't think that has a relevance to what we are saying here just now. Jazakallah.
You have mentioned that. Sorry.
No, one lady, one man. Go talk.
When you said that somebody,
I am hearing you.
when you say that you introduce yourself in 2 words, for example, how would you say it? If not the name, and if not with the name as you said, and I am whatever is my qualification, how would I then introduce myself is what I would like to ask you.
I teach you how to succeed in life. Are you interested?
Next.
Sir, I have a question.
Then you will ask me the question. Ji.
Sir, I'm in training. My question was, you mentioned that schools that deliver bad results also sell in India. So, yeah, they are the only ones that sell. So, my question to you is, why is that, and what can be done about it?
Why is that is easy? Because parents are not interested in their children. What can be done about that? Shut them down. They run proper schools. How? I've written a whole lot of stuff on it. I've spoken worldwide on this. So go to my website and you get all those lectures, sit down and listen to all those lectures, you will know what to do, inshallah.
Jazakallah, sir.
Jazakallah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
You have mentioned that it is disastrous to exclude the women from businesses. So can you please motivate the community to include the women, or some example so that everyone can be motivated?
How to motivate the community to have women in business?
Yes. Actually, here we see here in AMP, we have seen there so many ladies involvement. Our women folk are involved.
That is because AMP is not a family business.
Yeah.
There's no money involved. Believe me, if there was money involved, women would not be here.
So we need to motivate our community to include. What is the reason why we are not?
Motivation. We need for the men who are owning businesses to understand that women add value just like men add value. It's not a gender thing. It's because they are educated, because they have the competence and ability. I'm not saying hire a woman because she's a woman. No. Competency, as I mentioned there, competency is the only criterion. So if competency is the only criterion, then whether it's your son or it's your daughter, how does it make a difference? So why do you allow a son to come into the business? For sons it is very simple. If he is born, he is in. He has to do nothing. He just has to be bodily present. But the daughters, and the interesting, the paradoxical thing is that in today's world, especially modern world, all the business families, they send those girls to good schools. Many of them go to good colleges. So they are highly motivated, they are very committed, they've got a lot of knowledge and so on and so forth. Then you say you can't come into the business. So what must I do? Make chapatis. Or if you're Gujarati, make samosas. For God's sake, it's insane. But that is what we... And South Asian families, believe me, it's not a Muslim thing. It's not a Muslim thing only. It is a Muslim thing, but it's also there with a lot of South Asian families. I was asked to talk about this in Singapore. There's a lecture of mine in National University of NUS, in National University of Singapore on this particular... The issue of gender relating to successes, businesses, having successes in businesses. Very important. Make competence the only criteria of appointing a successor, whether it's a daughter, whether it's a daughter-in-law, whether it's a son. And as far as recruiting people is concerned, the same thing. But then again, it means also that you need to work on the culture of the organization, because many men do not like to work for women. So that patriarchal, male-dominant culture also needs to change.